What does the Constitution mean to you? Constitution Day is a day to remember and celebrate the Constitution and all the many rights given to Americans. We are a free country and given many rights, but with those rights comes responsibilities. We have to follow the laws and rules to be able to function properly as a country. I specifically like the Fourth Amendment, which is the right of the people to be secure of their persons, houses, and papers, and effect against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. This basically means that people are allowed to have their privacy, and an officer cannot search someone without permission or reasonable suspicion. An officer also cannot search or take someone's possessions without permission or a legal warrant. I like this amendment because I want to be an officer when I am older, so I look at it from an officer's point of view. I think it is so important for people to know their rights, especially this one, so that they can tell an officer that they are violating them and the officer does happen to mess up. This information can help for other people's personal experiences involving the police so that they may trust the police a little more involving a physical dispute with searching one's person or searching and taking one's personal property. They should feel strongly and educated on their rights to stand up to the police when they are doing something wrong. It is important for people to tell officers so that they can try and fix their mistakes and then learn from them for future purposes. There were two cases of the United States Supreme Court that stood out to me involving the Fourth Amendment to show how this amendment is good but unfortunately also bad. It is often mistaken since there are so many missing holes that people can maneuver around. According to the court case of Mapp v. Ohio, there was an illegal house search without proper legalization of warrants and an illegal arrest and use of illegal evidence in the trial. This case originated in Cleveland, Ohio. Police believed that Dollery Mapp was hiding a suspected bomber. Officers illegally forced their way into Mapp's home without a legal search warrant. Mapp told the officers they could not come into their home unless they had a legal search warrant. Officers then came back later with a piece of paper which was not a legally signed search warrant and showed it to Mapp, but she did not get to look at it closely. They rampaged her house but did not find a suspect. Instead, found a trunk of obscene pictures in Mapp's basement. She was arrested for possessing the pictures and was convicted into the Ohio court. Mapp argued that her Fourth Amendment rights were violated by the illegal search, but the state court and then the state Supreme Court both deemed that her Fourth Amendment right had not been violated in the search. She then showed her case to the United States Supreme Court, arguing that her Fourth Amendment right had been violated and by the illegal search of her home, and that the evidence found should not be used against her. The court agreed that the evidence had to be obtained legally with a legal search warrant. The High Court handed down a 5-3 decision in favor of Mapp, ruling that unlawfully seized evidence cannot be used in state court. Mapp v. Ohio talks about an unlawful search, while on the contrary, Terry v. Ohio talks about a fair and justified search. Terry v. Ohio is about an officer who frisked 3 men who looked like they were going to rob a store. A detective approached 3 men who were hanging out outside of a store acting suspicious. He identified himself and frisked them, finding 2 concealed guns. 1 man was convicted for the hidden guns. The issue they approached to the Supreme Court was whether or not the frisking was against their Fourth Amendment right. The Supreme Court held an 8-1 that the search was legally justified since the men were acting suspiciously. If circumstances justify a belief that an individual is armed and dangerous, the justices ruled the officer may pat down the outside of an individual's clothing. This means that the officers cannot go into an individual's pockets without permission or probable cause, which they did not have at that time. The problem with the Fourth Amendment is that there are so many nooks and crannies that you can get around with probable cause or reasonable suspicion, more so than most amendments. We can work on that by making the statement more to the book and straightforward so that people cannot get around it as easily. There are also positives to the amendment, though. For instance, it allows officers to help keep bad things off the streets like illegal guns and drugs. Both of these court cases can come together to work with each other. For Mapp v. Ohio, Mapp's house was illegally searched and she was convicted with illegal evidence. For Terry v. Ohio, the 3 men were searched correctly and with good intent. The officer had reasonable suspicion to search the men from the outside because they were acting suspiciously outside of the store. These 2 cases correlate because they both have to do with the Fourth Amendment, but also they complement each other. Mapp shows how searching without a warrant or permission is illegal, while Terry shows that it is legal to search from the outside with reasonable suspicion. There are good and bads to each amendment, but we have to try and focus on the positives. The searching with reasonable suspicion has helped keep many bad things off the street that could cause harm to others. People need to know their rights and amendments to stop things like the Mapp v. Ohio from happening. Even though most of the time officers try their best not to break the rights of the people, there are sometimes a few officers who do break it. People should know their rights in general so they can educate others, but also prevent illegal searches and seizures from happening to themselves and others. People have to stand up to each other and to help enforce other people's rights as well. We have to all stick together to make the world a better place for younger generations to grow up in a better environment.